Hey everybody, welcome to The Secret History Living in Your Aquarium. On this channel, we explore some of the odd, bizarre, amazing, and interesting tidbits of history about our hobby and the creatures in it. Along the way of this search, I have bred over 150 species of fish and have kept over 120 different aquatic plant species. But over the years, there are only a handful of truths that I can say exist in the hobby. And three of them that I have found are from the oldest people that I tend to interview, or from the folks who've been in the hobby 50, 60, 70 years or more. In the old books and in books of people who've spent their whole life doing this. And they have several things in common, and it is these three tips or tricks, if you want to call them that, to breeding more fish faster and growing them out faster and getting whatever fish it may be it tetras, cichlids, angelfish, which are a cichlid, gouramis, guppies, you name it. These are kind of tips and tricks that cover the entire gamut of fish keeping freshwater fish. And I would love to know if you guys have heard of any of these tricks or if you know any better ones. So if you know some good ones, please make this a learning experience and share your experience down in the comments and share those tricks with us. So let's get into number one. All right, number one, and this one may be the most well-known trick. This was learned early on in our hobby, and it holds true perfectly today. But that is to know where your fish are from, know their water, and know the seasons. Now, before you think, okay, this is going to be three really obvious things, just hold on and wait until we get to number two. We start to get out there with some weirder and cooler tricks. This one, though, is pretty self-evident, and it is that if you have fish that are from an equatorial region, they have a wet season and a dry season. Now, most of the time, these fish, be them danios or pseudomagills, rainbow fish, tetras, pencilfish, loaches, or even cichlids. Of course, cichlids have to be on here. They breed in specific conditions. Now, evolutionarily, they have been taught to breed in these conditions because it's what's best for their species. So, what I want to impress upon you is look up this information when you buy a fish. So, for instance, gouramis. Here is a chocolate gourami, or a samurai gourami, as it's sometimes called, or rainbow gourami. And they are from Southeast Asia. They live in swamps, and there are lots of different variations of that. Some have tannins, botanicals, things like the lily pod here and the leaves down below. And some of them have a really low pH, some of them have a neutral pH and are full of rainwater and other things. But what's universal about these fish is that they all experience the climate in their region. And so that's what I'm talking about. Look up the climate. So you can generally get a fish, even if it's from hard water, to live in soft water, or soft water to live in hard water, high TDS to live in low TDS. And you don't know necessarily, especially if these species were bred on a farm or, in Florida or something rather than in their natural habitat, they may already be used to different water parameters than what the wild has in store for them anyways. So what we're talking about here is learning the rain season, the dry season. That's usually what it's going to be in aquarium, in fish keeping of tropical fish. And that is generally that the water level starts to go down as the season gets drier. Now, as the water level goes down, there's less and less water available for all these different species. And as that water goes down, when it does rain, you know that rain is going to cool down the water. Also, it's going to aerate the water. So in here we have species that tend to be in swamps, rice paddies, and or calm parts of streams, and we have water falling to give them aeration. It's actually the surface of the water tension being broken that provides the most benefit for aerating the water. Same with if you have bubbles coming up, it's where the surface breaks that tension where you're going to get the most benefit. But that's just good for keeping your fish healthy in the meantime. Same with water changes and so forth. But what I do, and if you've watched my channel, you've seen this many times, is I'll allow evaporation to take place. We'll turn up the heat to the warmer end of the spectrum. We'll simulate the end of the dry season, and for 2 to 4 weeks, we'll allow the aquarium water to evaporate off. Sometimes we'll even help it along the way and take scoops of the water out. Once this process is going on, the fish have sensitive organs all over their body. You see the line down the side of this gourami here? That is a lateral line, and it can sense pressure in the water, it can sense movement, and it knows if there are 5 inches of water above it or 2. And it knows if there's a fish moving to the left or to the right. But in either case, these little guys can tell when the water is getting lower. And so when that's a natural process and you've mimicked it, it simulates that rainy season going on. And you can speed it up faster than the real rainy season would actually happen. You can then take this same effect, and while it's happening, it's actually doing something else for you, which is increasing your tannins, or any nutrients that are in the tank are getting more and more concentrated while the rest of it evaporates off. And you can do this with many species. I like to do this with plecos and cories and bettas, but you basically get your fish to think that the rainy season is ending, or that the dry season is ending rather, and that they need to hurry up and have babies, because when those rains come, they need to scatter their eggs all across their territory. And when the water starts flowing again, oftentimes these stagnant pools, they need to have their baby fish ready, and oftentimes because the water's low, that's where fish can feed and thrive best, because all the food has been concentrated. So you've just now, by letting it evaporate or taking water out gradually and keeping the temperature warm, you've simulated the end of that dry season. So then what you're going to do is you're going to take a water change, take it down to about 50% of the tank water, and just allow those fish to be hanging out. And I think plants are always a good thing, but to each their own, and everybody has different tips and tricks and ways to raise things. I've seen people raise things in glass bottom aquariums and do an amazing job of it. So I can't tell you right or wrong or what's best necessarily, except for that this is mimicked in pretty much every successful spawning I see of most fish, and that is you're going to trigger them with a big old water change. That water change is going to bring the TDS level down. So if you have naturally hard water in your area, maybe you want to get some bottled water or RO water, or even just distilled water, boil up some water, something like that, or get water from something like a dehumidifier if you have a fish room, and you're going to pour that in, and you're going to pour it in at 10 to 15 degrees cooler than that max temperature you've been keeping the fish at. Also, like I said, the food's all condensed, so you're going to be feeding your male and female fish lots and lots of protein during this period, because that is what they're going to want to eat. Now, if you have bristlenose plecos, or say you have these adorable Stiphodon algae eaters, then of course feed them accordingly. Give them fiber or vegetables or zucchini, whatever it is that those fish eat. When I say protein, I mean that mostly in the sense that most female fish that lay a lot of eggs like cichlids, or even livebearers that give live birth, like these guys over here, they're going to need a fair amount of protein to create little bodies in their body. So we're going to give them a great diet of food right up into the point. Now, you may think that I just took a whole 10 minutes explaining one, and now we're going to spend 20 minutes explaining the next two. But that is not true at all. In fact, we've already covered all the foundation for the next two tips or secrets that I find incredibly helpful. So, the next secret, number 2, coming up on our list, and that is to feed those fish in that period. Feed them not what they necessarily want to eat. Feed them what their fry or their offspring would want to eat. So while you're priming them, while you're mimicking nature and you're studying all the different things, maybe they live in a river and the pace picks up, so you can add things like a power head. And that's when you can put your own art and style to fish keeping. And everybody's going to have different secrets and techniques for different species. However, for many species, for instance, they're going to eat adult shrimp, but maybe their offspring are going to eat baby brine shrimp, daphnia, other little creatures, vinegar eels, and maybe you need to culture these things in your fish room so that they're at the ready when you want to breed your next species. So here we have some little celestial pearl danios, and to get their parents to spawn, I had to give them a week or two of the food that they wanted. And what that was baby shrimp. So the adults like to eat baby shrimp. So that fattened Mom up and gave her protein. However, what she was really looking for was what these little guys want to eat. So if you get what I'm saying, the number 2 trick is to make sure that for at least a few days, if not a week or two, you're looking at the microscopic or near micro level for most fish. And that is to look at the little things, the little white dots that dance around at the bottom of your aquarium, the algae, the infusoria. If you don't know what infusoria is, you can look it up. But basically, you can leave a bit of vegetables, broccoli, cucumber, zucchini, in a cup, or lettuce, a cup of aquarium water, and you will be left with little life forms within a few days, 3 or 4 days. So now you can see the adult shrimp. Well, we also have the baby shrimp, and that's why I put pregnant Malawa shrimp in with these fish. They live in the same region. They're used to each other. They live in the same creeks and lakes, and they want to eat those little babies. Now, the parents aren't going to use all the energy that they've stored up, usually for months and months, even though we've cheated and given them all that protein and energy and food and the right conditions in a shorter period of time. They're not going to use that energy unless they think that that their babies are going to survive. And so they need to see that you have that baby brine shrimp in their tank every day for several days, or that you have that vinegar eel culture or infusoria. Look up what it is that the babies eat and make sure it's there, even if the parents don't touch it. So that will give you major success that maybe you've been struggling with in breeding more and more fish. Now, the methods all change, whether you want to do colony breeding or you want to have fish that live in a community tank. Perhaps you have fish like these haplochromis where they need to breed in big groups or with caves and certain conditions, and plants aren't really an option much for them. Or maybe you have angelfish in a community tank. Maybe you have them in a sterile tank. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You need to season the tank both to let the mom grow and the dad grow. With Plecos, the father is going to guard the cave. With mouth brooders like these ones here, the male is still going to need the energy to guard the nest or the spawning site, even if the females take the babies. But in some species, the males take the babies. So no matter what it is, you need to feed for those babies, and you need to make the conditions and the water parameters that the babies want, because that's what the parents are looking for. They have evolved to know when to use all that energy and protein that you've been giving them. So, number 3 on our list, and probably the coolest one yet that I've seen and that I love to watch happen when I'm spawning fish, is an interesting one, an interesting trick at that. And this little trick works with fish that are from the same region. So whether you have a pistogramma like we have here, we have trilineatus or trifasciatus pistogramma, and they're hanging out. Here's the female right here. We've got the caves they need. We've got shrimp in here. We've also got algae and little grazing grounds. The water's warm enough for when we want to do that cold water change. And there's these little stiphodons. There's also shrimp. Yet again, I've got shrimp to feed them. Well, what we're also going to do, the number 3 trick and the coolest one on the list to me, is we're going to induce spawning by finding another fish in the fish room. So find another fish that's already having babies recently. So maybe your gourami just had babies. And apistos are from the Amazon, so it may not work with them. But for instance, when we were looking up here and we had Papua New Guinea pseudomagills and gouramis, we could use gouramis, we could use bettas together, and when you mix them together in the water and they're already in spawning mode, they'll release hormones. And these hormones, these chemical signals, are known to actually trigger other species to spawn. So we had plecos in here the other day because these cichlids were exhibiting spawning behavior. And sure enough, the plecos were triggered to start spawning. And these fish are from a different side of the world. However, more reliably, you can find that you'll get behavior even in nanofish. So for instance, these half beaks swimming here, and these Gertrudae pseudomagills also up here. These Gertrudae will lay pretty much every day. The half-beaks are actually one of the strange fish, one of the livebearers that's not a guppy, a pleco, a mollie, or a platy, sorry, not a pleco. And they will oftentimes not have babies that regularly, whereas the little pseudomagills or Medaka rice fish or killifish may have babies almost every day in some species. But them being triggered, even though it's daily, is enough sometimes to trigger these guys to start having babies. So these creatures are looking for complex signals that have evolved in their water for them to spawn. And they're not just looking for signals from, the environment alone. These guys, like these blue-lip buffalo head cichlids, they're looking for signs from something like the Peclotia catfish or other cichlids. So oftentimes when you get one species spawning, for instance, Plecos, corydoras, and angelfish, you get one of those spawning, and they all start spawning. And it's really a quite magical thing to see happen. You can also see it happen with even shrimp and other species that are not even in the fish genera family. They're almost in a different kingdom. No, not quite. But by doing this and by keeping them together, by sharing water, you can risk also, causing disease. But many fish keepers actually rotate water through systems that are on multiple tanks because they want those hormones, those endorphins, those chemical markers that all these incredible creatures communicate with to be shared, because oftentimes it starts a chain reaction. Now, if you have a big predatory fish in your tank, there's a chance that maybe it sends out signals that tell it, the other little fish, danger, don't spawn right now. But when you get it right, when you find complementary fish, or dither fish as they're often called, you can hit the jackpot. And oftentimes you can have, like in this tank, 4 or 5 different species that spawn communally. You just better get ready to scoop those fry out, or those eggs out, as soon as you can, so that the parents don't predate on them in a smaller space than in the wild. Alright guys, I hope you liked this video going over some of the tips and tricks to spawn fish. Here we've got a closing shot of a German blue ram, and to get these guys comfortable, we've put a really skittish fish, the rummy nose rasbora, with them. And we also often will have loaches. These guys are a little skittish, but these are peaceful loaches, and they're in the tank, and they all mutually, with the hiding spots and with the water changes, they have, even though the German blue rams are from Bolivia and the rummy nose tetra or rasboras are from Lake Inle in Myanmar, they have the same trigger, and that is the rainy season. And they also have the same environment of lots of little fish swimming around, lots of dense plant foliage, and gardens of underwater. And so by replicating that, you don't always need the same biome or biotope. Sometimes the water chemistry and the general feel can provide what they need. But when you're looking for real success and real results, ask an old breeder, ask a pro who's been in the hobby for a long time, which species complement one another for spawning. Because I know for a fact that corydora, angelfish, pleco, and crebensis are another set that work magnificently, where they will all spawn within a week of one another once one starts going, very, very often. I have videos documenting this on my channel in the past. Alright guys, I think we've talked enough, and I've taken enough of your time for 3 supposedly quick suggestions on how to get way more fish from your adult breeding stock, how to get healthier fish, and also just how to get them ready to spawn again sooner, in a matter of a month rather than 3-6 months. If I missed something, or if you disagree with something, please let me know in the comments. I'm always here to answer questions or to correct things and chat about it. I don't know all the answers. I don't know a right way or a wrong way to do everything. This is just the best way I've learned so far. If you want to support the channel, please feel free to check out the info in the descriptions. There's links to my artwork, as well as to various nonprofits that I like to support. And there's some killer prices with aquatic arts on my latest video at any given time. I like to work with them because they encourage U.S. bred fish, and I really think that's something we need to encourage, and we need to be informed consumers of where we get our fish and how they're treated, and all these secrets and tips are part of that. Alright guys, I'll talk to you next time on The Secret History Living in Your Aquarium. Oh, and hit that like button if you liked it. If you didn't, why are you still here? Take care. I'll talk to you next time.